elections in Canada are going to be happening on April the 28th. So barely a month from now, Canadians will be going to the poll to cast their ballot to do their civic duty and decide the next leader of the country. And we have two people who are at the forefront of these elections. We have the Conservatives led by Pierre Poilievre, who has been making waves, seems to be dropping down in popularity in recent weeks. And we have the newly elected Prime Minister, very weeks old in this position, who is leading the Liberal Party and has gained some popularity, particularly in light of the present tariffs from the United States. So these are the two top candidates for this position. I understand that many more candidates that they aren't as popular. So we're going to be focusing on these two because they seem to be a representation of the divide that currently exists in Canada. So, so what are your thoughts so far? I think we did predict that Carney was going to announce on Sunday and eventually did.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was open secret that he was going to make the announcement on Sunday. So he did make the announcement. Elections are due to occur on the 28th of April. I just kind of wanted to add, talking about Carney, who is current Prime Minister, as well as Pierre Poilievre. Carney hasn't really held an elected position, but has been quite involved in liberal politics for a while. He was governor of the Bank of Canada in 2008 with the financial crisis that came on, and gained a lot of popularity because, according to experts, he managed the Canadian economy a little bit better than most central banks, right? Yeah. So he gained a little bit of fame there, and then he moved as governor of the Bank of England during the COVID period. He is also a businessman, has been on the board of directors for Brookfield, which is a housing investment company. As for Pierre Poilievre, he is a seasoned, I would say, career politician. He is, I think, 45 years old now, has been in politics since he was about 25. I think that's when he first got elected to the House, when he was about 25 years old. So he has spent most of his adult years in politics, in conservative politics, right? So he is not exactly a newcomer. He has been in this game for a long time. Of course, he has run elections for his seat a couple of times now. So you would expect that he would be a pro and would do better. But again, there's a little bit of disappointment in how he's performing, right? How he's performing, which we talked about the last time. So yes, I would say kind of different people. Pierre Poilievre is it's of course conservative, old school, hard edge, combative, tough. That is how he wants to be seen. Carney is a little calm, has a calmer demeanor. It's said to be compassionate, and is said to, lack the baggage that most politicians come with. Since he's never been in politics, there's really nothing for us to hold him on, right? He's brand new, has no baggage, and I think that is some sort of an advantage, because again, there's nothing to compare him with, because he has no history in politics. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Well, he has a history, but not as the author of that history, because he was barely supported. He wasn't the front runner in Trudeau's government. He was an economic advisor, a very high position to hold, and you have much influence, but he can always push it and say
unelected. I think his argument is he was an unelected. He was just an advisor, and of course you can make the argument that advisors make suggestions and only advice, right? It is the politicians who make those decisions. So that is an argument that he can clearly make. So it's hard to tie him a great deal to the failures of the last government.
Yeah.
which if it were maybe Christian Freeland running, it would be easier to make that connection, right?
Yeah.
Because he is considered himself an outsider. Yeah, it's a little tough to tie him to this politics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of Mark Carney, is interesting. And I'm just reading about him. He holds three passports. I don't know if many Canadians, and I'm just saying this because at one point we had leader Andrew Scheer, who was
Mhm.
leader of Conservative Party in the last election, lost to Trudeau.
Mhm.
Remember the uproar when he was found to have American citizenship as well. He had to drop his American citizenship to even contest for the election just to show
Mhm.
that he is Canada first. But now we have a Liberal Prime Minister who has a British passport and an Irish passport together with a Canadian passport. So that makes for a tricky situation because the same people who accuse a one-time Conservative leader of being un-Canadian have a leader who doesn't only have two nationalities but three actually. So there seems to be a little bit of hypocrisy here. But what is politics without hypocrisy? Um,
I think it's definitely a good thing to note because again now I am beginning to doubt where his loyalties lie, right?
yeah,
is he loyal Canadian, is he a loyal British or a
yeah,
loyal Irish?
Irish. Yeah,
So again it puts a leader like that in a situation where um you know which side do you pick?
yeah.
You might be president or you might be prime minister of Canada, but your loyalties may lie in
Hmm.
some other
Right.
country, a country that you hold a passport to, right? So
Yeah.
definitely, if I were voting, well, of course, I definitely be taking that into consideration.
And taking that into consideration.
Of course, yes,
Yeah, well, just imagine McCartney negotiating on behalf of Canada with
the British.
England.
Yeah,
Where are you? Are you British? Are you Canadian? Where are you? So definitely conflict of interest there.
hmm
I mean, I just brought that up to point out the hypocrisy that exists in the media calling out this kind of things. Had it been where Pierre Poilievre had this double nationalities or even triple nationalities, it would have been a big story in the news, but it's not. Anyways,
they give liberals a pass, progressives.
no, they did. Of course, the
Again,
media is liberal
it's their
control.
media. It's the progressive media, right? So they give them a pass quite easily.
Right. Yeah. I guess if we have the video ready, we're just gonna listen to a little bit of Pierre Poilievre's I'll say points that he's trying to advance, and the latest speech in is that he's going to reduce the income tax of Canadians by 15% in an effort to grow the middle class, because everyone knows that Canadians are being crushed by incredibly high taxes. That is just shrinking the middle class, making people poorer every day, making groceries, gas, everything just too expensive for the average Canadian.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts before we get the video? Well,
Well, I definitely think that both politicians, both Makani and Pierre Poilievre, are doing their best to cut the middle class, right? By
right.
making offers for tax cuts for everyone.
Hmm.
Um, Something that every smart politician would do because things are tough here in Canada.
Things
For
are
those who don't know,
for
things are
everybody.
tough. Groceries are expensive. We have the housing issue crisis here where people can't afford to buy and own houses.
Yeah.
The rents is skyrocketing, right? So you have to find a way to ensure that people have money in their pockets.
Yeah.
And one of the ways of doing that is by cutting taxes. That way they don't pay too much into the government coffers and they might have a
Hmm.
little bit of change to spend. And again, that's how the economy grows, right? If people are spending, if people have
Yeah.
money to spend, then the economy does well. If things are so tight that people are worried about, making extra expenditures, yeah, I think things generally become difficult. So I
Yeah.
think this is what both candidates are trying to do, right? Make sure that Canadians have a little bit of money in their pocket. Now the question is, how long would this last?
Yeah.
What would the impact be on the government revenue, right? Because again, we
Hmm.
pay taxes into the government coffers so that they can provide other services that we as individuals need, can't afford, or those who are not very privileged can benefit, right? So if you're cutting taxes, it means you have less.
You have to cut down on services.
You have to cut down. So it's given. It's definitely a give and take, right? You have to give something. And again, I think this is what they are giving for votes.
That Canada First Conservatives will cut income taxes by 15% for the average worker or $2,000 for the average couple. This is a tax cut for seniors who are drawing their pension or retirement income. They will pay, on average, 15% less. This is a tax cut for the workers behind me, who will pay 15% less on their income tax. This is a tax cut for the waitress, for the welder, for the barber. This is a tax cut for everybody who has ever got up early in the morning and worked hard to build our country. This is a tax cut that will put Canada first.
So clearly that's his latest speech, and as someone who supports him, I think that would be good to give Canadians a lot of relief if they could cut the tax rate by 15%. That would be a lot. But I don't see how he's going to do that because, on the other hand, are Canadians willing to relinquish the services that they so benefit? Because Canada has a lot of social benefits that people who are not working or people who don't make as much tend to live on. Are Canadians in general are willing to give a bad eye to that and move on? I'm like, say, you have to earn what you make, or you're going to earn less if you don't make if you're not making enough money. You know, I don't know if Canadians are willing to do that, but at this point in time, we need a leader who's strong, who can make decisions that are difficult, but then that the majority gains. I want to see a country that people work to earn a living, people who put in the effort, who put in the time, see the benefits in their lives, and people are not incentivized to just stay home and stay on government benefits because they can live a comfortable life without going to work. Difficult it may be, but these are times, difficult times calls for difficult leaders. So hopefully he can stand up to what he promises, and should he be the next prime minister, do what he promises.
So in terms of income taxes, I there's just a few statements that I got that I wrote down here that I think it makes sense to read, so we kind of have an understanding of what both candidates are offering. So Poilievre plans to slash the rate for the lowest income bracket by 2.25% point to 12.75% if elected. So the tax again. Taxes are kind of categorized in brackets.
How much you make,
If you make 57 less and less, you pay 15% of tax. If you make between 57,000 up to 114,000, you pay 20%. If you make 26, if you make between 114,000 up to 177, you pay 26%. Again, the other brackets after that. So what he is saying is that he is going to cut 2.25, so from 15 to 12 for those who are making that lower income bracket, right? Carney has also pledged to cut 1%, so bringing it down from 15 to 14%. Of course, it leaves money in people's pocket. Under Poilievre's proposal, the average worker earning 57,000 would save $900, with a two-income household saving $1,800 annually. For Carney's middle-class tax cut will save double-income families up to $825. Poilievre's plan would cost the federal government at least $12 billion, while Carney's plan would remove about $6 billion in revenue. So again, just going back to the conversation that we had earlier, it's give and take. You cut taxes, of course, you're definitely losing revenue, right? And like you rightly said, are Canadians willing to because again, when you lose revenue, it means, of course, government services are definitely going to be cut as well. So Canadians are willing and open to get this big tax break, call it a big tax break, just at the end of the day to lose
some services,
some social services, which for most Canadians is a safety net. We go back to the government for things that we really cannot afford, right? And so are we willing to do that? Have a little bit of money in your pocket and then spend it on things that the government should or could have been providing to you? I think that is the question that Canadians need to answer for themselves. Yeah.
And the Canadians, even in Canada, even the conservatives are such a weird. They have such a weird mix of conservatives in Canada. Canada is the only place where, if you go to the most conservative province, which is Alberta, conservatives want nothing. You cannot do anything to touch their public health care. So this is something that American conservatives cannot understand. Because usually in America, it's usually government off, limited government. We're going to direct our care. We're going to do things by ourselves. Give us the right to make that decisions. But that doesn't fly in Canada that much. You can remember when Danielle Smith before she was premier, she had all these promises on how she's going to privatize healthcare, bring third parties, and try to liberalize the health system so that people can get private insurance. My goodness, was she shunned out even by conservatives? So it's important that we break down these categories because if we're taking strictly American conservatives, it doesn't really apply here because even the most conservative province in Canada, their public funded healthcare is a treasure and they want to keep that regardless of how much it costs them in tax. I don't know if the sentiment is changing lately, but it seems that we are emotionally attached to that publicly funded healthcare that we will pay 50% tax just to keep it.
I think there's one thing that Canadians are proud of is their healthcare system.
It's the healthcare,
it's free, and the fact that it's not privatized, and the fact that it doesn't matter who you are, where you are. If you're sick and you go to the hospital, you can't get the best healthcare that is available to you, right? I mean, Canadians, that is what makes us who we are. We are few. One of the few nations who have that. It's expensive. There's no denying that. It is an expensive program.
It's unsustainable too.
But again, that is definitely a conversation that most Canadians I don't know if they're not willing to have.
I don't think they're willing to have that conversation.
But again, it's an expensive program. And again, both parties, so the Conservatives and the Liberal parties have identified a couple of things, services that they are not willing to cut. They would cut everything else, but they are not willing to cut spending. They are not willing to cut childcare. They are not willing to cut dental care. They are not willing to cut the new pharma care program that.
So they are adding more to the already public funded healthcare than the Conservatives are.
Both of them are. Poilievre hasn't made a clear declaration whether or not he is going to cut them. So he is not saying, I'm going to cut this and this and this. In effect, we can imply that he is not going to be touching those, right? But again, it makes sense because these are sensitive.
These are very sensitive
issues for Canadians. A politician who attempts to cut this social services would face a lot of challenges in the pool, right? Another thing too that they are not willing to cut is both agree that they are not going to cut transfers to people and provinces. So transfers to individuals. So pensions and elderly benefits, no, they are not cutting that. Employment insurance, they are not cutting that. Child tax benefits, they are not touching that. GST and HST credits and disability saving grants, they are not willing to cut that, right? Transfer to provinces and territories. The equalization thing, nobody is willing to open that conversation.
Yeah.
Which is fun. You would think the Conservatives would. But they too are not willing to open that conversation. Canadian health transfer, so money that comes from the federal government to the different provinces for health care. Nobody's willing to touch that, right? And again, social services, they've clearly stated, especially the Liberal government candidate has made it very clear. He is not willing to touch anything. So my question now, again, the question that we would ask, Canadians should be asking is, How are
What
we
are
going
you
to
willing to
fund?
sacrifice?
How are we going to fund this? What are we going to sacrifice to keep these things in place? And I think that is definitely an important question we should be asking, right?
And if you don't act now, we're going to act in the future because the way our healthcare system run is just unsustainable.
I think what we've concluded is that Canadians are probably okay sacrificing a few other things
Okay.
for their healthcare
At
because
the moment, I think at the moment,
of course at the moment, because again both provinces are fed, they spend at least 40% of their income of their
the
expenses.
GDP,
It goes to healthcare, right? So it tells you how important it is for them.
Can you imagine 40%?
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So if the GDP of Alberta is, let's say, $1 trillion, you're talking about 400 billion is just going to fund healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not saying that healthcare it is an important thing, but then if you just because think of the government running like your household.
Mm-hmm.
If half of your income is going to pay on your medical expenses,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to remain poor.
Yeah, well, I mean, well, you are going to make sacrifices, and I think that is why these leaders have said they are willing to look into government spending and waste, because there's a lot of waste in government.
There is a lot of waste.
There is a lot of waste. What Donald Trump and Elon Musk are doing with Doge tells you that there's a lot of money that goes to waste for projects and they fund things that you don't understand. So see how much money they are spending on wars.
For gay gender,
See how much money they're putting on
issues in
gays. They're spending millions of dollars in African countries to promote gay and lesbian. So it's like you spend money that you don't have on things that are not relevant even to the people that you're spending money to.
Yeah.
So this is how these candidates feel like they're going to save money, right? I get a feeling that they just copied from Trump, because Trump was like government efficiency, cut down waste. That is definitely how they want to cut down the expenses. Poilievre says he is going to defund CBC. Of course, the federal government pays for, again, it's a government a station, even though they will not admit, the government pays for it. So technically,
they recently started admitting, oh, this is funded by the government when they do their ad.
Oh yeah. So Poilievre is willing to defund CBC, which is, again, it's a way of saving money. CBC can operate like every other private radio or television station and raise money on advertisement, on programs, and do what everybody else does, right? They don't have to benefit from. Again, I'm not saying that I support it, but again, this is the argument that Poilievre is making. Another thing he is willing to reduce is he's going to reduce foreign aid. So sending money to countries that you really have nothing to do with. Money is tied here in Canada, and you're spending millions.
People, your citizens are struggling, and you're sending money to other
money. So Poilievre is willing to cut that. He is also willing to shut down the Canadian Infrastructure Bank, which again, it's put in place to finance infrastructure. So he is willing to cut that. We're not sure how much money that would bring into his government. And also, he is also willing to cut the Housing Infrastructure Fund. Remember, with the housing issues, the government, the Liberal government, Trudeau's government, had set up a fund to kind of assist or support or promote building and development of housing, right? So he is willing to cut that, because according to him, it hasn't really yielded any significant result, hasn't contributed to building houses here in Canada. So yeah,
it's just like more bureaucracy.
Which he's
trying to fight,
Which he's trying to fight. Carney is also willing to cut a few things. He wants to cut the bureaucracy. He wants to cut consultants. He wants to cut corporate welfare. He wants to cut foreign aid, and also look at waste, government waste, right? Again, also trying to make sure that government is a little bit more efficient in its operation. Again, similar ideas. There's not a whole lot of difference in what they are willing to cut to support the tax breaks that they are giving, right? Again, I just wanted to kind of bring this out so we could compare and contrast and see the similarities It feels like they all have the same, how you call it, the same agenda.
The agendas are the same, but how they're going to approach the situation, I think that's where it's going to differ. Like they always say, the devil is in the details.
Yes, in the details. Yes.
How are you going to achieve this? That's the big question. It seems to me that Poilievre is willing to shrink the government to reduce it to its core principles: control national interests, control immigration, control defense, and then, still be in a position to be able to spur up the economic growth of the country, promoting Canadians' national interests. On the other hand, Mark Carney seems to wants to grow the government more. He's proposing more programs. He's still sticking to the pharma care. He's still sticking to the dental care. He's still sticking to, I don't know if he's taken up on Jadmin Singh's proposal to include reproductive care, where the government is basically funding for parts and abortions and other things for Canadians, you know. So the agendas sound similar, but again, the details, the devil is in the details. Um, um, who is really trying to take away government from your life? Which, as someone who's a self-declared conservative in that light, I don't want. I want the government to do its role, but do not be actively involved in my life up to the point where you have to know my menstrual cycle in the case of a woman to be able to provide me reproductive care and blah blah blah. That's crazy. So take off, and that usually means you're not funding policies that will require more of my tax dollar money. That probably means that it's less of my money going to fund government programs. But on the other hand, as someone, as you have stated, the liberals who are always trying to expand government, always trying to find new programs to fund, what does that require? Unfortunately, that requires you Canadians to pay more into the taxing system to be able to support us. So it depends. Where do you want to vote? I know we're not in the business of telling people to vote, but what do you want for your life in Canada? Okay, you want to enjoy all these social programs, which usually means that everybody's around the same level. The government is purposefully targeting to make sure that there is equality of outcome among them. So the harder you work, you're not necessarily a difference in your life. Or do you want government to be limited to its purpose, like the main functions of security, national security, um, national policy, foreign policies, immigration, and all that stuff? You know.
So another area of another area that has been a little bit quite sensitive, and with both candidates having almost the same similar ideas, has been the housing issue.
Right.
As you know, housing is a hot button
issue now in Canada.
hot button issue here in Canada, especially up Vancouver and the Toronto area. If you leave,
and Calgary is coming up there. Like
Calgary is
getting up there.
It is getting up there.
You and I have seen the growth of Calgary. We have experienced how the prices of houses have skyrocketed in the last 10 years. Remember when we just moved in, like a couple that could have like basic jobs, they could combine their income and get a decent house. You cannot do that right now. You cannot, because the prices are just out of control. Like the average person cannot afford a house. If it goes like this, our kids cannot be able to afford houses in Canada. It's just ridiculous.
Again,
in Calgary, sorry,
it's definitely going to go up there. But again, this is what statistics says. The median housing price in the Greater Vancouver area was about $1.2 million in February. While in the Greater Toronto area, the median price was about $1 million.
Yeah.
So an average family might be unable
to make that kind of a purchase,
to own a house. Who has $1.5 million for a house? Who has that? The middle class. I don't know many people in the middle class who can put that kind of money down.
Right.
Right. So
This is in light of the average income of Canadians. Do you know how much is the average income of Canadians? The average combined income of, I think Alberta is leading the charge here. The average combined income of two people working, I think it's like 90,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, of two people working together, that's the average. So if you get, and these are people who are busting their ass together, it's like 90,000. The average income of Canadians is like 60,000 in Alberta, 61,000 in Alberta, and then maybe around 50 something in Manitoba or something of that sort. But it's not that high up there.
A 5% down payment for a house of 1.2 million. How much is that?
That's like 50,000. Is it 50,000? Yeah, I think it's like $50,000.
How many people have that kind of money for down
How many
payment?
people have that kind of $50,000 for down payment?
Anyway, so this is
it's
what
5% of a down payment. And when you're going for $1 million houses,
they don't want 5%. You're not putting down 5.
You're not putting down 5% for $1 million house. Which bank is gonna get you a loan for that? Like you should not even go near a $1 million house if you only have 5% to put down.
Anyway, so this is what Poilievre is promising: to get rid of the GST on new homes sold for up to 1.3 million if he wins. So no GST. Again, GST for a $1.3 million house is quite significant.
Oh, it's quite
if first time home buyer doesn't have to pay GST for their first home, I mean that definitely, I think that makes sense. The same thing for Carney. He is pledging to roll out a near identical GST cut for first time home buyers on homes sold at or under $1 million. So again, very similar policies. Quite similar.
Have you not to cut you short, have you ever thought to yourself, like, where do all these new politicians get these ideas from where the previous government did not have? Like, what is going on? Are these people just playing us like footballs? Like, they just think we are so dumb that because it's election time, they come up with all these crazy things. How come they didn't come with all these things a month ago, 2 months ago, half a year ago? Suddenly they'll find ways to be able to make cuts so that they can be relief for Canadians. Does that thought ever go through your mind?
Of course. And the point is, what is the sincerity of all this?
What is the sincerity?
People make promises, they get into office, and then they turn around and say, yeah, I wasn't in office. I really didn't know how bad things were. Do you blame him for not following through with the promise when he's saying that things are terrible and we really cannot afford these cuts? Right? So I definitely get the feeling that politicians do what politicians do at times like this. They are looking for votes. They can't be honest with us because nobody wants that kind of honesty. You can't say, really, things are so bad, we will not be making cuts. We might be increasing taxes, right? No, they wouldn't say that. Nobody would vote for you if you're that honest. So of course, they find these creative ways of solving the problem. Right, all these creative ways of solving problems that they created in the first place. Because I mean, the deficit and the debt that we are in is as a result of poor spending.
The housing prices, the inflation.
It's all as a result of poor planning and poor spending and people living, the governments living above
printing money out of
printing money out of thin air, printing money and pulling money out of thin air. And you remember during COVID. You see how much money this government, the Liberal government spent? And you ask yourself, where do they get, where is the money from?
Where the money?
Where do they get all this money? Giving everybody money here, paying bills.
Money that.
There's grants here, there's, Jesus Christ, where do they get all that
money? For people who need a reminder, during COVID, the Canadian government basically told people to stay home and they paid
home and get paid.
Home. Like, can you imagine shutting down the economy and then telling people that you don't have to go to work and then we're going to give you money to survive?
Stay home, be unproductive. And be compensated for that.
Yeah.
Right? That's what they did. They were, people were receiving money for no work done, sitting home, catching inchecks.
Business receive money. And then
business got money, organizations got money, so it's we are in this hole because we dug the hole. Our governments, they dug the hole themselves.
Yeah, well,
with all this wild spending. as if they won the lottery. I don't know. Government win
Well,
lotteries.
government is not accountable to anybody. The next time they'll just come again and ask for your vote, and then they come up with these new policies and say,
Mhm,
"Oh, now we're going to make cuts. We're going to do this. We're going to do this."
mhm.
And again, how much can you distance these people from the decisions they're making now? Like, how much can you distance McCartney, who was the main economic advisor to Trudeau, from the mess that we are in right now? Eh, you know,
He can argue all he wants. Trudeau is nowhere to be found. So
Trudeau is nowhere to be found.
nobody can ask him how he came about with his own policies, right? He
Right.
can't point a finger. Now he's just hiding somewhere and hoping that this thing blows through, and then so that is what politics is. They come and go. They make promises they don't keep. They spend money they don't have, right? And then
Yeah.
the next guy comes and says, "Oh, we are going to cut this, we're going to cut that, and we're going to cut this." At the end of the day, nothing gets
No,
done
nothing gets
because they
done.
go in and they say, "Oh yeah, we didn't know it was this bad." So that's where we are today.
Yeah.
Another thing too that people are taking into consideration in choosing who they might be voting for is the Trump factor. Um, in your opinion, what role does Trump play in in your decision or people's decision
Yeah.
in picking a prime minister for Canada?
Right. 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 I think the American president always has an influence in Canada. They have it on the world, but particularly in Canada. And Trump, there is a deep-seated hatred of Trump by so many Canadians. Trump derangement syndrome in Canada is a serious thing, and Canadians do not like Trump for whatever reason. But if anything, the recent tariffs and the wars on trade has been an opportunity for that to be died up in levels that we've not seen before. And if you want any evidence, just look at the numbers of the conservative, of the liberals and the conservatives too. Look at how the liberals have gained a lot of popularity by a leader who just came out of thin air and people barely knew him, but he's almost at parity with the conservatives. That tells you how much, for better or worse, the American president has an effect on the Canadian
So would
election.
you say it's the approach of these two candidates, their approach to Trump that has caused, or it's just the fact that this Trump is fighting with tariffs and making all
Yeah,
these statements? Is it
yeah.
how these leaders have attempted to deal with
Solve
Trump's?
the problem. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The reason you think?
I think so. I think that's the main reason. Like we discussed in our previous episodes, they all sounded the same in their response to Trump.
Mhm.
So it's, oh, we're not going to be the 51st state, blah blah blah. We in DC every 2 weeks to go and make a decision, to go and beg for a decision to be made. Um, it is a retaliation that is in place, and I think we share that disappointment on how the conservative leader reacted to that. But also, it gave Trudeau the opportunity to look strong in front of Canadians, to look like he was negotiating in their behalf. And then people are looking at Carney as someone who has a lot of connections, someone who was able to lead the country through financial crisis, not only nationally, but went abroad and did something, although he's not also very well liked in England.
Mhm.
But they see him as someone who has the economic stamina, a lot of um, 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 intellectual, a lot of strong standing economists who disagree with his approach, but they feel like he's the one to see Canada through.
Mhm.
No, it has all this. So in that sense, he's gained a lot of popularity among Canadians in such a short period of time. You know, I think they're almost at parity now, but. I think in him, Canadians see new hope. In Trudeau, there was some sort of a strength. I mean, Canadians can find a way to see some strength in Trudeau. That was baffling to me, But anyways, they somehow turned the tides, and they gained significant grounds that is very worrisome for the conservative.
But don't you think that the argument that McCartney is has a steady hand, is experienced? Don't you think that's a proper argument? because again, like I said, he was the governor of the Bank of Canada during the 2008 financial crisis, and even after that, he was tapped by different countries and different organizations to predict and to help manage financial situation. Don't you think people are rightfully have a
hope and
see hope and see that he might be able to navigate this, because again we are technically in turmoil, right? Things are quite unstable with Trump, so people believing that he might be the one to kind of sail through this storm, right? It sounds like a good argument.
It does, but if you don't like Trudeau, know that Carney is a more sophisticated Trudeau. Is a Trudeau that has international connections, is able to implement certain strategies that he wants. But if you are the kind of person who thought that the government went too far, just brace yourself for Carney, because he is Trudeau on steroids. He is Trudeau on green energy on steroid. He is Trudeau suppressing Alberta energy on steroid. He is Trudeau, the globalist on steroid. He's a little calmer than Trudeau, but he is comes with an economic mindset that, in my opinion, is going to make Canada poor, because he is trying to um, um, suppress the things that Canada is good at, namely Alberta energy, which is what we export, which makes Alberta the main contributor to the national GDP of Canada and this family that we call Canada. But he's trying to suppress that, because he's part of this global climate idealism that the Green New Way is the way forward.
But he too has made some concessions with respect to his climate policy. The consumer carbon tax, he is going to cancel it. He has canceled it.
He was an author of that, and so he can't really say.
But again, this is what politicians do. They create a problem and then they turn around and solve that problem, and now you think they've done a lot for you, right? So again, this is a problem which he created. So yes, he's canceling that. Pierre Poilievre too is canceling the consumer carbon tax for consumer carbon pricing rebate. Carney says he's going to replace it with a consumer-focused green incentive paid for by.
So he's still going green energy.
I mean, at the end of the day, climate change is definitely an issue that has to be addressed at some point.
Yeah.
So you can either find better ways of addressing them, or we deal with the consequences whenever those consequences get to us, right?
Right.
So it's I don't see any reason why we can't start dealing with it now. I'm not saying that we shut down everything that produces emissions, right? I'm not saying that we do that, but
that's Carney's position.
We need to find creative ways of.
But that's Carney's position. That's Carney's position, to keep the oil down because of the environment, to stop Alberta from even producing oil because of the environment. Now he's dialing back, but he was an architect of the carbon tax, which was meant to suppress the production of hydrocarbon. So he's trying to separate himself from that. That's really his idea. So you think Alberta has been through enough? Wait for Carney. If you
Trudeau Carney is saying that was Trudeau's idea. That's why he's stepping back from it.
Of course, he's going to say that.
I mean, I'm just saying that's the argument he's making, right?
That's the argument he's making. But you just have to look at his record.
From an idea, it's simply saying that, oh no, this was Trudeau's policies. I don't buy those policies, so I'm stepping back and canceling all these all these issues, all these things that his predecessor had put in place, right? But again, I agree with you. He was an advent
of the carbon tax,
supporter of carbon pricing and a reduction in emissions. He was even ambassador to the UN for climate. He held that position.
He held that position.
He is just backing out from something that he believes strongly in.
Because he got a position.
And again, for the sake of votes, we've always made that very clear. They do these things because they need your votes, so they can back out of things that they are supporters of.